I screwed up my first instrument panel, and I was pretty disappointed about that because it turned out really nice. Everything was laid out nice on it, all the holes lined up good, everything was just perfect on it. But I used some real thick, heavy poster board for a template on it. And when I went to drill the instrument holes, the poster board in the template, even though I had marked and center punched and everything, the holes, and was real careful on it, it pulled the drill bits out of alignment with what the holes were on it. And it didn't show up until after I pulled the template off from the instrument panel, off the metal, and then I could see that the holes were all misaligned on it. Well, it wasn't just one hole or two holes, it was a whole bunch of holes. So we tried to salvage it by TIG welding the holes up, and the first 2 or 3 holes worked okay, but when we got to the middle of the panel, it just started stretching and expanding and, just distorting all over the place. So I straightened it out some with shrinking dolly and a hammer and stuff, and I might be able to get it into some semblance of shape, but it was never going to be as nice as it was before. So I got another piece of aluminum and I laid out another instrument panel, and this one was laid out with the same template as I used on the first one. Everything is pretty darn close. There's a few little differences that I made in it, but mostly everything's pretty darn close. I laid out some of the holes here for some of the switches and circuit breakers just a little bit different, but mostly I kept it pretty much the same. I had a hard time laying out this holes here for the radio mounts, and I did a lot of work on that to get those in the same position or as close as possible to it. And then I've laid out all of the instrument holes, and I used the same template. This is a really good template here from Craigie Aero. Now the first ones I printed out weren't exactly the right size, but once I changed my printer parameters and to print it out to scale, or however, I don't remember how I did it, but once I did, then these templates are to scale. So you can actually glue these templates onto a panel or something and cut out using these templates. But they also give directions on how to make these templates or make these holes to line them up, and they're real good directions and they work really well. I did that. I just laid them out on this panel. I used this top surface here, this bend, as a reference, and when I put it in the airplane, I'll put a machinist level on that and level it to the airframe. But then I laid out my instrument holes on there, and then I took and cut these out with a circle cutter. It's like a big fly cutter for the drill press. It's just got a big shank that comes down, and then there's a drill bit that is inserted into the bottom of it. And then there's a long arm you can move in and out with a cutter hanging down off of that, and it was used for woodworking. I used it on some other things, some cutting out some plywood panels and some holes in panels and stuff like that. And I resharpened it to use on the aluminum, and I tried it on some thick aluminum that I had. It must be 1/8 inch or something like that. I don't know. Pretty thick stuff, and it was kind of rough going, but it cut through okay. And once I put it on this is 63 thousandths, and it cut through it real fine. I adjusted it for the big holes first, and then reset it and cut the small holes. And I've got positions lined up on there for all of the screw holes. This thing shows how to line up for the screw holes, for the mount holes and everything on there too. And I got those lined up on there. I had those marked on there, and that's pretty much what I did before, only I did it on the thick poster board on a template instead of directly on the aluminum. This is masking tape over this to protect the aluminum from getting scratched up. But I didn't want to take a chance on screwing this one up, so I've got this cylinder head temperature gauge, and I set it on here and lined it up in the hole and on the squares, and then used a 3/32, actually I used a number 40 drill bit and drilled down in there and spotted all those holes. And then once I had them all spotted, I went back through and drilled them all out. And now I'm doing the same thing. This is a reject tachometer that they couldn't rebuild. I'm using it, setting it up on here, and then I've got a bigger drill bit there that fits down in these holes a little tighter. The 3/32 drill bit would just be too sloppy in there and wouldn't give me good accurate holes. And so I'm spotting these holes on all these 3 1/8 inch instrument holes. Now they're all coming out exactly on the marks that I had on there, but I didn't want to take a chance on it and screwing those up. So I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing. This is working really good. So this is the last hole that I need to spot. So I've got lines running parallel from the top here, and then I run vertical lines off of those on the dimensions that template on that paper laid out, and so everything is square. These lines are square with the top up here, or parallel with the top up here, and then the vertical lines are square with the top. So I'll get all this lined up. This instrument fits just exactly perfectly inside that box, so I can line up the sides of it and everything, the top with the top and the sides with the sides. And when I cut this instrument panel out, when I laid it out, I had a big piece of 1/4 inch plywood that I glued onto the masking tape onto this, and that's what I use that for a backer to cut this out on the bandsaw, so it helps stiffen it up and make it easier to cut, and it didn't flop around so much and vibrate so much. So the back side of this tape is sticky from the contact cement that I used to glue the plywood on, so that helps hold these instruments in position so they don't move around too much. Well, I'm just spotting a hole. I'm not trying to drill them all the way through. Now, this is a step drill, so the first part of it is smaller, and then this size right here fits loosely in the hole, but it fits better than most of my other drills, and it's long enough that it clears the body of this tachometer. So all my holes are spotted, and I can go ahead and drill those out now. And I'll go ahead and drill those out with a 3/32 bit, and then come back later and drill them out with I think it says a .170 diameter bit is what the holes are supposed to be. I think they're clearance holes for a number 6 8 screw, number 8 screw probably. So we got all my holes drilled. These are for the circuit breakers and switches, mag switches, master switch, starter switch, aux power, intercom and other stuff up here. This is for the Hobbs meter. This is a hole to run I have a jack that a line that goes out through there that plugs into the VHF marine radio for the mic and audio circuitry to go through the interface for that. And we've got holes here for the carburetor heat and mixture carburetor heat and backseat heat, defrost and whatnot there. And then this is a hole for the primer. So it's all cut out. That's what it'll look like. Oh, I still have to pilot the holes in there for the Hobbs meter. So that's the last thing I have to do. I got all those holes drilled out for the instrument mount screws and deburred, and they turned out a whole lot better than they did before, thankfully. I feel relieved about that now. That's going to work out just fine. So now I guess I got to put the nut plates in on the outside of that on the top. I've still got to make a bend here on the outside edges here on the bottom of this. We didn't bend that on the brake. Anyway, everything else is looking good. I'll put those nut plates in around the top like I did on here, and then I can rivet that radio rack in to here, and then we can get it painted and it'll be ready to go in. So I got to wondering about these hole sizes, and I looked on the sheet, and it does say on there .170, and then it says for clearance hole for number 8 screw. I looked on my chart, machinist chart, and it says the clearance hole for number 8 screw is number 18 drill bit for a tight fit and 16 for a loose fit or a free fit. And so the 11/64 is right between the two of them, and that's what I drilled those out to. That's just a little bit bigger than the 170. It's like 17, oh, what did I say there? 11/64, so it's 171.9, so it's almost 172. Oh, anyway, like I said, that's halfway between the 18 and the 16. Probably the thing that concerned me the most about this second instrument panel, other than getting these holes, openings for the radio rack mounted in the right place, was getting the mount screws in the right place to mount this instrument panel to the fuselage. Now the other instrument panel, I had it lined up just about perfect. I took a machinist level and leveled across the fuselage of the airplane and had it level, and then I set the instrument panel in here and leveled it up, and then I drilled these holes out here for the mount screws and got those located, and then put nut zerts in the little tabs in there that mounts into. So getting this other one mounted in here so it was level and everything right on it, and locating these holes was a concern. So I got the machinist level and I laid out here on the airframe and got a location on it, a level point on it, and then I set it on top of this instrument panel and set it up just as close to that as I could. Then I took a hole finder like you use for locating holes in panels for rivets, blind holes, and I located the holes here for these two screws for the mount, and they come out just perfect. I just checked it all out, and it's pretty doggone close. So now I can go ahead and rivet in the radio rack into the panel here where it goes, and everything is going to turn out good. I got nut plates installed in this, and just pretty much the same thing as I did in the other video on where I installed the nut plates on the instrument panel, except this time I put in number 8 nut plates instead of number 6s. I didn't put quite as many in on the top up here, and I put in number 8s since this is going to be the boot cowl mounts to this, and it's while it's not structural, it is important for it to maintain rigidity. So well, there's the instrument panel all ready to be painted. Got the radio rack riveted in, all the holes drilled. I got locator holes there for the switches for the mags and the master switch, and anyway, everything's all ready to go to be painted now. Had to do a little adjustment on some of the holes on these 3-inch instruments. I took each one of the instruments out separately and laid it in where it goes and adjusted those holes to fit. They're all a little bit different. I used this old tachometer for a pattern on there for drilling the holes, and the tack, the new tack goes in here, and it fit just fine, but all the rest of the instruments needed just a little adjustment on the holes in places. Of course, I had to make a cutout here for the altimeter, but all of the 2 1/4 inch holes, all of the small holes are perfect, and I've used this cylinder head temperature gauge here for a template on that, and all of those holes, mounting holes, turned out perfect. So anyway, the thing is all ready to go. Now I'll go down and clean it up and squirt some powder on it.